Good evening, Ms. Kodichima. Do you hear me? Please let's indicate. Can anybody hear me?
Good evening, I can hear you.
Good evening, Ma. Thank you very much for joining.
It's my pleasure. I think your network is a bit bad, but I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the call. I'm going to send a reminder. I've already sent a reminder like a few minutes ago to the mentees group. I can't see any mentee on the call yet, so I'm just permitting me to send another reminder to the group so that the
All
mentees.
right. All right.
Yeah, okay. I can see we have a fair number of mentees joining the call, so we can start now.
Sorry, Hussein, we can't hear you.
Evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the call. It seems like Hussein's network is bad, so I'll be stepping in before he comes back. Okay, okay. Seems like he's back. Oh no, he's not. Okay, I'll be reading the mentor's profile. Sorry, I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Okay. Okay, our first mentor for today is, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Okay. Our first mentor for today is Ms. Kodichima Anibogu. I'm so sorry if I don't pronounce the name right. She's an astute legal professional with a wealth of experience in commercializing intellectual property and in data protection. She is involved in various facets of these areas of law, from advising clients on identification and exploitation of IP rights to preparing documentations for IP transactions. She also conducts trainings on intellectual property and entertainment law. On the data protection front, she holds a CIPP/E qualification from the International Association of Privacy Professionals. She advises on data protection laws and conducts data protection audits and trainings. She has also authored several articles on IP and data protection and is a contributor to the Thomson Reuters Digital Business Global Guide for Nigeria. She is a senior associate at the prestigious law firm of Jackson, Etty and Edu. Thank you for joining us, Ma.
You're welcome. Good day, everyone.
Good day, Ma. Our second mentor for today is Mr. Solomon Okedara. He is a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He is a practicing legal practitioner and researcher with over 14 years post-call experience and outstanding expertise in human rights, with a special bias for digital rights, including data protection and privacy, digital identity, online expressions, intellectual property, e-commerce, tech and corporate transactions, and artificial intelligence, having an unusual knack for excellence and matchless client satisfaction, with a view to delivering maximal results. Armed with a peerless ability in creative legal research and analysis, delivering impressive results in review of laws, legal principles, and standards. He is a partner at Solomon Okedara & Co., a firm of barristers and solicitors, and co-founded Digital Rights Lawyers Initiative, a not-for-profit NGO that focuses on promotion and protection of digital rights. He is a strategic litigation lawyer with a robust interest and proven expertise in freedom of expression and digital rights litigation. He has litigated on digital rights and freedom of expression subjects in courts across Nigeria up to the Supreme Court, and he has conducted cases at the ECOWAS Court, among others. Solomon was in 2020 recognized as one of the top 50 individuals leading in legal innovations in Africa at the Africa Legal Innovation Awards. He currently serves as a legal researcher with Columbia University in the city of New York for the Ivy League School's Global Freedom of Expression project, where he analyzes judgments bordering on freedom of expression subjects, covering over 120 jurisdictions across the world, including US, Europe, India, and Africa, amongst others. He is a 2016 Research Fellowship recipient of International Center for Not-for-Profit Law, ICNL, Washington, DC. He was specially recognized in 2017 as Heroes of Human Rights by Access Now. Solomon was specially recognized as a finalist at the 2018 Global Freedom of Expression Prize of Columbia University. Thank you for joining us, mentor. I'm going to check if Hussein is back so he can continue. Hussein, over to you.
Thank you very much, Amina. Sorry, everyone, I was having a network issue. So, Mr. Solomon is not on the call yet, and thank you very much for joining us. I'll be giving the floor to our mentor now. She'll be giving us an overview of the topics for about 30 minutes. Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma, you're muted.
Hello. Okay, so can I go ahead?
Yes,
can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Right. Okay, let me just get my...
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, okay. Just trying to put my slide up. Okay, just give me a second. Trying to share it. Just to be sharing the wrong slide. Let me try and see. Yeah. Okay. Let me know once you can see my screen.
Yes, ma.
I'm sharing
Yeah,
the.
we can see your screen. We can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, slideshow started. All right. Good evening, everyone. So today, of course, we're talking about data breach management. And we have to start with a data breach, the definition of what a data breach is. First of all, because I've already gone through your presentation, so I think good jobs on the description, but a very simple, a basic description of a data breach would be unauthorized access to data, unauthorized access to information, right? And because we know that this is a data privacy, this is a data protection session, we know that we are interested in personal data, not any other type of information, because there's also company data. There's data that does not identify an individual, but in this instance, our focus and our interest is personal data. So a data breach in this instance would be unauthorized access to data which can be used to identify a person. So I'm sure some of us are aware that there is now a data protection law in Nigeria, the Nigeria Data Protection Act of 2023. And prior to that, there exists the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, the NDPR. So it has a definition of the data breach, personal data breach, but the Act also has a definition of personal data breach, and that's what I have here. So I'm reading it out. A breach of security of a data controller or data processor. That is anyone handling personal data, anyone dealing with personal data. A breach of their security, which leads to or is likely to lead to the accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure, access to personal data transmitted, stored, or otherwise processed. So this covers a wide range of activities, going to having unauthorized access to data that is being transferred, is being transmitted, is being processed, or where it is even stored. So if it intercepts personal data in the course of a data sharing, data is moving from one place to the other, and that data is intercepted, or hackers get access to it, or anybody that's not authorized, that is not the data processor. For instance, you would typically have a data processor, someone that will deal with your data. To give an example, right? As a company, I might be sharing data with a tech company to help me put all my records of my customers in a database. So in that process where I'm sending that information to them, please find attach the list of all my staff or list of all my customers. If it is intercepted in that time, that's a transmission. In the middle of transmission, there is a unauthorized access by someone else who is not the person that should have received that data. And where I have my customers' information in my company system, in my company is stored, is on our computer, and next thing is we're seeing it, on the dark web, or hacker sends me a message that we've gotten yours. That means that the data was hacked into or was accessed while it was stored, right? So, for instance, there was a time, those of us that are in Lagos State, there was actually a time where the revenue service, one of the government agencies had their taxpayers data was available on their website. Definitely, that's personal data that would have been stored, even if you're imputing your data, even if in the course of their duties, they are, putting the data together. It's not anybody that should be able to go to the website to see it. But it so happened that in this case, one had access to it, and that was a data breach, and they were even fined by the regulator for that data breach. So Or I think that helps with the explanation of what a data breach is in this instance. So when we're looking at impact of data breach, what are we talking about? What is the effect? How is it a big deal if someone accesses my personal data? Is it a big deal if a company that I give my personal data to provide a service to me, to do some work for me, like a social media company, is it okay? Or even a Alibaba or Jumia that I save my account details on and all that, my card details, right? So that I can easily buy things. Jumia food, those of us that like eating, I can easily buy things. And next thing I know, I'm not able to, someone starts, I just see my account that my money is going, that kind of thing. So what really is the effect of a data breach? So of course, the loss of the data itself is an impact for the breach. Loss of data to the company in most instances. Sometimes the data is actually duplicated. Sometimes they don't even have the data as well. Everything crashes and it's only the hacker that has access to that data. There's of course a reputational loss. By the time that you're aware that your data has been hacked, and you gave it to a company, you're not likely to want to give them access to that information anymore, right? So that means that you would not feel comfortable with them. There's a loss of their reputation. If they were the most popular company or the most popular business to deal with, by the time this happens, you're like, I don't want to, use these guys anymore. I don't trust them. Look at what they did. That's an impact. Loss of revenue, of course, flowing from that loss of reputation. If they had 1,000 customers, when this happened, they maybe have 200, they will have 300. At that point, people will be saying, close my account, delete any financial information you have for me. I will no longer work with you as well, right? And fines and sanctions, because the law has in place what should happen and how data should be treated. So under our own Nigerian law, there are fines and there are sanctions and there are punishments provided, where as a data handler, you do not take some steps. So if we tell you now that you should ensure that those data are stored and locked, passworded, anybody having access to the hard drive, anybody having access to the, even your system, there ought to be a password where those data are being stored. Even when we talk about physical storage as well, there has to be lock and key for your cabinets, things like that. So if they come out and there is a data breach and you're like, oh, this information was stolen, this information was lost, and the likes, and the regulator actually does an investigation and they see that measures were not taken, right? And I'll give an instance. British Airways, the flight carrier and all, they actually experienced a data breach. I can't remember the year. And then they were fined heavily by the regulator in the UK, the ICO. And the basis was that when they checked, because the hackers had access to flight details, had access to credit card information and all that, by the time they checked, they saw that the security measure was not in place. How many of us know this WhatsApp two-factor authentication? So you want to use your WhatsApp, but you still need to enter in your PIN and do all that, right? Because of the sensitive or the kind of nature of information that is passed through WhatsApp and that is being dealt with, that made them to take those steps. So where you are an organization or you're a business dealing with data and you know the kind of information that comes through you, there are certain things you have to do. So British Airways now got a very huge fine because in terms of their process, they didn't take enough security decision. They didn't put enough security measures in place to protect that information. And when it got exposed, of course, what happened, it was easy for, there to be unauthorized access because they didn't do the needful or the proper thing. So that affected the level of their fine or their sanction. Under Nigerian law, as it stands, where there is a breach of privacy rights, that is different from a data breach. Now, a breach of privacy rights is the law has provided 7 to 8 rights that me and you, any individual whose data is being handled, has access to and enjoys, right? And if as a result of any of those rights, if the company doesn't carry out any of those rights, yes, and someone actually has unauthorized access, and you are able to tie the two together, then those specific sanctions for them would fall on the company. That's the sanctions for breaching privacy rights would fall on the company. You're able to tie them in. But even different from that, once you don't comply with the provisions of the law, the Nigerian law in place, you are guilty of an offense. So there is a sanction for you. So with all that in mind, it is very important that organizations and businesses and those that handle data, do their best to avoid a data breach. I'll mention at this point that it's not, you as a company or as a business, it's not easy to just say there will not be a data breach, right? What you can do is your best to prevent it, but you cannot, because of the way technology goes. I mean, you guys are here. I'm sure there are even more things you know about technology than I even do, than the law does. And as things keep changing, as more technology comes up, it just gets harder and harder. So technology will keep advancing and people will keep making attempts to, as long as data is valuable, to steal data, to use data wrongly, to hack data and all that. So while companies are trying their best, it may not be possible that they're able to, prevent 100%. But what you are expected to do is do your best, follow the provisions of the law, look at your business, look at your structure, look at the kind of data you handle, and put in the best security measure possible. When you fail to do that, you are more likely to be sanctioned. You're likely to get higher punishments when a breach occurs. There's more likely to be higher punishments, yes. So when we look at data breach detecting, how do you know that something has happened? How do you know that there's unauthorized access or there's unauthorized activity or something to be worried about? And I have a list of some here. The first one is suspicious network activity. So you're seeing, I don't know if some of us, you've tried to write your email or you're just going through and you get a prompt that, oh, your Facebook profile or your Google account was accessed, and they tell you the states and they tell you the place it was accessed. And you're like, and the question will be, is this you? If it's not you, if it's you, ignore. If it's not you, you get those other prompters like that. So those are the kind of things we're talking about that help to identify suspicious activity. Then also sudden changes to your system passwords or accounts or critical infrastructure. So when you're trying to sign in, or when one is trying to sign in these companies, what they would observe by the time they're trying to access some things and it's like, this is not the password, this is not the password. Of course, that means someone has gone to the back and done something and it has changed. So with those kind of things, you are beginning to notice that there is a problem. You see files that you did not place in your system. You see, they see transactions that they didn't partake in. You can access network, social media accounts, things like that. Those are indicators that there has been unauthorized access or something has happened. Customer details, like I mentioned, Lagos State's internal revenue, the taxpayers' data was on the website. So anybody that went and opened the website was just seeing everybody's details. Of course, that's a breach. The internet connection is unnecessarily slow, unlike before. Network access, it keeps going in and out, And of course, you have our antivirus, we have our software technologies on our system that we've put in those programs we have that can tell you, there is a risk, breach detected, unauthorized access, and things like that. So those are the warning signs that something is going on. And the earlier that they are noted, the better. So we talk about how to respond to data breaches when these come up. The law says different things, but let me just first talk about an internal policy. Any business dealing with personal data must have a data breach policy. That is, they must have a document that provides, and that document must be shared to everybody involved in the company. For instance, employees of the company. Anyone working with that company should know that if any of these things I mentioned, examples I mentioned that both happened, immediately send an email to IT, right? So those are the kind of things you want to put to first response. Immediately you receive any of these, send an email to IT, describe what you have received. If you can send a copy, if you can forward a suspicious email you got, or take a picture, send a picture. This is what I'm seeing. This is what's happening and all that, So you must have a document that you list out the points and the steps anybody should take when they come across suspicious activity, right? So your first step in responding to data breaches, that document you have on data breach, that policy document, go and do, what does it say? this is what you do. Do you tell IT? If you have if there's a data protection officer, that person has to be informed. If you have to write to the lawyer, that person has to be written to, and then the other person, the responsibility cascades. As you've shared all the information, if you happen to be the one that discovered it, the next step is taken by the second person, and then they move it like that, right? So your internal policy will also include the provisions of the law. And what does the law say? That's the Nigerian Data Protection Act and the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation. First of all, I gave the example of a company that is sharing their data with someone to help them provide or create a database. That's a processor. Meanwhile, the company that shared that data is the one in charge, that is the controller. So if it's the tech company, or if it's the the other one carrying out a task on behalf of another company that notices this, you have to let them know that this data you gave me, something has what happened to it. So after you do that first step, the law puts it gives you options, not necessarily options, but it does not mandate that you should inform the regulator unless it is likely to result in risk to the data subject's rights. I mentioned something about rights earlier. So you see, once rights come in, and the regulator, that's the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, must be informed, right? And that's the fact of it. And what we do in practice is any business that faces this should inform the regulator, because it's going to become a question of, did you not know that this will affect rights of data subjects? Did you know? Could you tell? It's going to be who determines how it is affecting rights. So once there is a personal data is breached, or there's unauthorized access to personal data, by a hacker or anything along that line, you must inform your regulator. And the law even provides steps on how you should inform them, the information that should be contained. I believe one group listed it out. That was good. And then the next step is informing the data subjects. Even informing the regulator, there's a timeline of 3 days, 72 hours to do so. The next step is inform the data subjects where the risk is high. And of course, imagine a social media company, a Facebook, a Twitter, that kind of thing. Of course, they can't send email to everybody and all that. In those kind of instances, they should make it a public announcement. This is what has happened. And of course, you should be taking steps to prevent or steps to repair the damage that has been done. So we'll look at prevention, right? So nobody wants this to happen. We don't want there to be data breach and all that. And your data breach management policy should also contain things like that. What do you do, right? As someone that uses data, as companies that use data, what should they be doing? What should those companies and businesses be doing so that our data, because me and you are data subjects, we are submitting our data in different places and things like that, right? How do we ensure that those people that are dealing with our data do not make it easy for hackers to get, or do not allow it to be breached? The first step is having measures in place. It's not vibes and inshallah. You don't just leave it like, oh, okay, nobody cares. You don't know. The data is valuable and everybody recognizes that, and you don't know who wants it. So you have to make sure, even as we are here, a lot of us are into, technology, want to develop applications, want to do different things, right? That means that as you are designing an app, even when people are designing apps, they also have to think about it. So even the bank apps that some of us have on our phones, even our social media apps, lifestyle apps, different things, they have to think about it and put in measures that will prevent unauthorized access. For instance, the two-factor authentication we talked about. So those are like technical measures. Then organizational measures is like for the business, what should they do? They should not allow just anybody enter their building, right? You have to show your access card if you're an employee. You have to tell them who you are looking for. Maybe they will even call the person, oh, this so-and-so is expecting you, before you can even let the person in. In some companies, you will wait outside. Whoever you're looking for will come out and pick you, and both of you enter the office together. So those are organization measures and different things that they can do to ensure that you restrict people from getting access to your information. Another technical measure is pseudonymization. This is when you use a false name, right? So it's like you are hiding that personal data by changing it. So if it is Bolu is 15 years, she's a girl, she lives at number this, you will just scatter the information and write, she's make up a false word. Nobody knows if this boy or girl, nobody knows the age, the address becomes something else, right? So you hide that data. And of course, if you think about it, I'm sure you agree with me that by the time that data is hidden by using false words or using fake things, it's going to be hard to know that this information here is talking about who Bolu, right? Another measure is encryption. So encryption is when you use not just false words now, you are using code. The words automatically becomes, and I think WhatsApp, yes, encrypts chats. The words automatically become codes that are unreadable unless you have the key, right? Unless you have the key that enables you to now decode it. So that already has protected information because it is scrambled and only few people that have that access can unlock what the information is. So we talked about passwords earlier. So we're ensuring that, laptops have password, ensuring that some places people want to get into some offices, they type in a specific code, there's a password, those kind of things. Even within an organization, some information is even more risky to get into the hands of wrong persons than the other. So you take those other special information and you further protect them, whether through passwords. Then another aspect of data breach is when these things, there's unauthorized access and that data is lost. Yes, it's also an issue if you cannot access that data. And to give an example, the right of a data subject is to request their data. So if someone wants their data and there's been data breach and you don't have it, you have already also infringed on the person's rights. So your measures as well have to be like data restoration process, e.g. backup. That is some of us, if we lose our phone now, we have WhatsApp backup. So what if we don't have, we'll start posting send our friends, we send our chats, I lost it, this, that, So a backup is a restoration process so that you are able to get information as at the last time you were saved in a different place. So also risk assessments. The companies that keep this information, businesses that keep this information should actually check that where they are keeping it, how they are using it right. If someone wants to get a hold of it, can they penetrate? Through what way? Through what means will they have access? So you're assessing any risk that can come to that data. And you test your tools. So you test your software, you test your storage system. So it's almost like what they call it, white hat hackers or something like that, where you are trying to hack, but for a good reason, to know that the bad hackers cannot get access to it. And of course, regular updates, many technologies, the developers keep on working on them, and over time they find glitches or they find gaps, right, where there can be unauthorized access. And if they are able to, correct that, they would always send you system updates, and sometimes you see, update your phone, do this, do that, and you can check. If you continue reading the information, you'd see why, fix some bugs, did this, did that, right? So those regular updates actually help to prevent likelihood of data breach. We also have data minimization, and that one is very important because it's looking at, sometimes some people collect data that they don't need in the first place. Can have questions. Oh, you're filling your form maybe for school or something, mother's maiden name, this person's name, that's one, and at the end of the day, if we're able to ask further questions, that was not necessary, but then that information is just there. So if there's a breach, instead of 5,000 data, because you've collected mother's maiden name of 10,000 people that you didn't even need to collect, they will count it and say, oh, more data was hacked, right? But if people are able to decide, what do we need? Do we need this information? Don't we need it? You're able to minimize the amount you collect, because the amount you collect can actually affect the punishment at the end of the day. Higher sanction, higher fine where there is more data breached. Then the last one I have here, implementation of retention policies and timelines. So under the law on under data protection principles, users of data should only keep it for a limited time. Keeping your information because you buy food from me, because you buy things from me, you use it. But I've noticed that for 3 years, I've not seen your brake light, then you have to stop. You have to delete that information and then you have to move on. When the person comes back, you start afresh, start the new relationship of customer, and purchaser. But if you leave it there and anything happens, unnecessary exposure. So those are things to help with prevention. And that's the end of my presentation on data breach management.
Thank you very much for that very extensive and informative presentation and beautiful PowerPoint slides. Ms. Kodichima.
Thank you, Mahdi. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Solomon is not on the call with us yet, so we'll quickly take picture time, then we'll move on to taking our mentees presentation. And I will encourage everyone to turn on your videos for a few seconds so I can take screenshots. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for those that smiling. Smile for the camera. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I've taken screenshots. Presenters, we have 2 presenters today, group 1 and group 2. I'll be calling on group 1 presenter. I hope you're ready and you can unmute yourself and share your PowerPoint slides while you are presenting. So it's over to you now, presenter 1. You have 15 minutes maximum to make your presentation. Do you have the presenter for group 1 on the call? Please kindly indicate if you're on the call. Okay, I don't think we have a presenter for group 1. If our presenter for group 2 is ready, you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
Okay. My name is Blessing Bill, and I'm the presenter for Group 2. Our topic for this week is data breach management, detection and response, the best practices for data breach management. So moving ahead, what is data breach? Data breach is an unintentional information disclosure, information leakage, loss, theft by an individual unauthorized to do so. Example can be in form of cyber hacks or the disclosure of confidential information by lawyers and doctors through chats or pictures unintentionally. So the NDPR, according to the NDPR, they define personal data breach as a breach of security leading to the unlawful destruction, loss, and unauthorized disclosure of personal data or unauthorized access to data subject data that are being transmitted, stored, and processed. So data breach actually means that personal data are viewed to what data breach management means. When we talk about data breach management, important plan in place to quickly address any harm to data subject information. It has to involve the process of placing proper measures in place to reduce chance
Am I the only one, or is it a general thing? The presenter's voice is breaking.
I couldn't really hear her. Her network is probably bad.
Okay, please, I'm back. I'm so sorry, please.
All right, you can continue.
Okay. Okay, I was talking on data breach management, where I said it has to do with the important plan that is being put in place to quickly address any potential data information. It also involves the process of placing proper measures in place to reduce chances of breach. And then when the data that is being held by companies is breached or hacked, certain measures should be put in place to prevent further breach and ensure proper control of the already breached information. Like when the data has already been hacked, the controller or the processor, there are certain things that they're supposed to do to prevent that from happening again. Then the NDPR provides that data controllers should develop security measures to protect data, and such measures include protecting systems from hackers, employing data encryption technology, storing data securely with access to only specific and authorized individual. Okay. In the event of breach of personal data, the NDPA requires data processors to promptly inform the data controllers, describing the nature of the data and giving information about the categories and the number of data subjects being affected. It's just like what our mentor said earlier, when it has to do with two companies, maybe these other companies sharing data with another company to help set up their database. So in that situation, the data processor should inform the controller that, okay, something has actually happened to the data you gave me to handle. And then a controller shall, within 72 hours of being aware of a breach, which is likely to result to a risk to the rights and freedom of data subjects, notify the commission, the NDPC, of the breach. And then section 40, subsection 3 of the NDPA states that where the breach is likely to result to high risk to the rights and freedom of the data subject, the data controller shall immediately communicate the data breach to the data subject in plain and clear language. Like, you have to inform your data subject that, okay, something has actually happened to your data within 72 hours of being aware of the data breach. And then communication of data breach in situation where it is very risky to the data subject is very important. And then the likely consequences of data breach must be communicated. I mentioned that earlier, that's still under the part of communicating to the data subject that, okay, something has actually happened to your data. And then the measures to be taken to address the situation and also mitigate the adverse effect should also be communicated, to the data subject. Okay, fine, you've told me that my data has been breached. Okay, what are you doing about it? What attempts are you doing to recover my data and also prevent such measures from happening again? And then section 8 of the NDPA states that the data controller shall keep record of all personal breach and its effects, and then the remedies and action to be taken. Okay. Then we move on to we move on to the best practices for data breach management, and think that up to 8 here. Starting from the first one, we have prepare for a data breach. Our mentor already talked on it. Like, you cannot just say, okay, my data cannot be breached. My data cannot be breached. You have to put some security measures into preventing that and also making sure that that data is not being breached. And then we have detect and confirm the data breach. You won't even be able to investigate, and you won't even be able to know, okay, that data has been breached if you don't detect, okay, that something like that is happening. And then our mentor shared some example of things you should note and take notes to know, okay, very well, that something is been happening or people are tampering with your data. And then we move to the type of data affected, whether it is a highly sensitive data. We have to take all incident response, like you have to communicate to the data subject. You have to take note of the time and the date of the breach, and then you have to report to the appropriate quarters and commission. We have gather evidence. Information about the data breach should be gathered in order to ensure better understanding and better minimization of the situation. Example of such information can be like what information was breached and how, like parties involved in the breach and the type of damage that was being caused. We have analyzed the data breach. This step aim to like determine the circumstances of the incident. And also we take containment, eradication, and recovery measures. Containment to prevent the breach from spreading. Yes, and then notify the affected parties, which is the data subject, within 72 hours of the data breach, and also conduct proper incident activities and legal compliance. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Blessing, for that presentation on behalf of your group. If I'm correct, it's group 2, right?
Yes, sir, it's group 2.
Okay, thank you very much for presenting on behalf of your group. Group 1, please, do we have the group 1 presenter on the call now? Group 1.
Maddie, maybe I can just make the comments while in interest of time, that I have on that.
Okay, I was just checking for the presenter for group 1, so to see if she's on the call. Benedicta is the presenter for group 1. Benedicta is not on the call. And who is the backup presenter? Okay, Ma, you can go ahead.
Okay. First thing, well done, group 2, Blessing. Before I go, maybe Mahadi, if I go on, maybe you can confirm. Okay, so what's the age range of people in group 2, and what level of study, university, like what level and the like, so that I just know how to make my comments.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Okay, so I was saying that what's your age range in your group? How old, like what's just the age range, and what level are you in school?
Okay, I don't know for everyone,
Yeah,
but
just general.
Okay, I'm 21 and I'm a 300 level student of economics department.
Okay, great. I wanted to have that background. Okay, is everyone are there law students in the class as well? In your group as well, rather?
Yes,
You have some law
yes,
students.
ma.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Okay,
ma.
that's good. Okay, so just quickly, well done, Blessing, and well done to group 2. It was presentation was good. It was a good attempt, but I noticed that your slides, I don't know if maybe I didn't get the final version, right? So the slides didn't look finalized and complete to me. And the understanding in the presentation didn't come through, but you explained. I noticed now that you explained very well, but me reading the slides, the understanding didn't come through. So what I also wanted to note is there was use of you're saying things like, okay, access to your personal data, what the definition of data breach. So I don't want you to see it like that. It has to be general because you are speaking generally to personal data. So it's not a personalized presentation, because I see where you mention where the group mentions your personal data, your personal information. No, it should be general to personal data and the likes. Then I see that where data is owned, right, or held by a company. So usually for personal data, people don't own data. A company will not own data unless the data subject has sold that data. And when we are able to remove that notion that data is owned, it's easy to put in all these proper personal data practices, best practices in place, because the company will not think that it's their data, they can do anything they want, but the individuals have given it to them, borrowed it to them for the purpose for which it was collected. Yes, I noticed that in the slide, and that should be corrected. And when we are talking about use of data, it's not only a company, it can be any business in any state, because a company has like a legal meaning, right? So when we're looking at data usage, we're looking at it also generally for any business type. So most of the slides didn't have heading. And I think when there are headings, they would have helped your subheading at each point. So if it's definition of data breach, that should be your subheading. If it's the notice period, when should you inform of data breach, steps to take, but there are a lot of blank headings, right? I like where you brought in the GDPR requirement on notification. So it's good that you're not just looking at, the group was not just looking at Nigeria, but also stepped out and looked at what the GDPR provides. That was good. Yeah, there's some grammatical errors, right, that should be corrected before slides are submitted like that. There was another thing about using PowerPoint. Your font style. If you have chosen that you're using Times New Roman, if you're chosen that you're using one particular font, ensure that all your slides have that particular font. Because I was seeing different font types any page I go to. So there needs to be harmony across, right? In it.
Okay, ma.
Yes. So your best
Okay, ma.
practices.
Thank you.
Yes. Best practice for data breach management. There was a list, but there wasn't an explanation. So take containment, eradication, and recovery measures, right? Maybe the explanation would have been there, or it wouldn't have been listed like that. You would have broken it down, just chosen one. Then, of course, because it's a presentation, to speak to it, that's fine.
Okay. The explanation was on some of the explanation was on
in the notes portion, or where?
I think before the conclusion.
Okay, so that means that it needs to be clear, and it's because of there are no headings. So if you have listed something, take urgent incident response action. If you want to now explain that, it can be a separate slide, then your heading will now be response actions or incident response, then you will now explain it through. If not, it's just jumbled up, right? And I saw legal and compliance, what did that mean, and all that. That should have been explained, and it should be clear. So I think all that's my comments for group 2. Very good job. There was research done, and it should. Yeah.
All right, ma. Thank you. We've noted your point.
Yeah, well done, Blessing. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Kodichi, for that comment and contribution. It's the question and answer session, so I will be sending in the questions to the chat box now, and we'll also be taking it. But I don't know if we have our second, our first presenter on the call now. I don't know if you're on the call, you can still take your presentation before we start the question and answer. Okay, Benedicta sent me a message that she's finding it difficult to log into the call. And I don't know if there's anyone in group one that can step in for her. Okay, I'm just sending in the questions to the chat box now. Ms. Kodichi, I'll be reading out the questions. The first question is, what are the key steps involved in detecting a data breach?
Okay. So, like I mentioned in my presentation, I think the first thing is to be aware of any suspicious activity. So for the business or the organization or anybody that's handling data, they know how things should normally look, right? They know how things should normally look. So once there's any suspicious activity or any suspicious action, they should be aware that something is wrong. Because if you don't know, you won't know when there's a problem. Everything will just look normal. But if you're able to know that this is normal, when something is abnormal, when it's different, you notice it. And very important because you're working with businesses, they're usually people, they're usually staff, everybody's an individual, even though they have a corporate structure or have a corporate personality. So you always need to have, there should be a document that will list examples of, data breach. And you share that should be shared with people so that people know what to look out for. Right? Many organizations, what they do periodically for their staff and users of data is they send emails, they send messages, they share these things, and they, little quotes to let people know. If you see this type of email is a phishing email, don't respond, don't do this, things like that. So by the time that knowledge goes round, people are able to identify a data breach. So I said that those are the key steps: documenting what data breach look like, then all of us being responsible to know when something is abnormal or a suspicious activity. Then we're able to detect a data breach. And of course, having IT experts as well, those that deal with the software, those that are handling maybe systems for organizations, they are now able to do the further search and confirm that there's a data breach, because it's typically a specialized area as it relates with technology of infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma, for the answer. I'll be taking it. We still don't have Mr. Gabriel on the call. I don't know. I think he's not responding to our messages. So I don't know if we are still going to have him before the end of the call. I'll be taking the next question. Thank you very much for the answer to the first question. Okay, Blessing has a question. Let's take Blessing's live question before we continue. Blessing, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Mention of using like fake names and then names that are, I think, not really related to the person when sending out your personal data information. But please, is that not like a crime, something like that, using when you are giving out fake details about yourself?
Okay, Blessing, let me explain for that. So that's not what you, as the data subject is the person that owns the personal data, that's providing the data. That's not what you do. When you share your information with the person that's requested for it, or the organization or the business, in their storing, they would now change those details so that only they have access to it. So that if any unauthorized person gets a hold of it, they won't know. So it's not for the data subject. It's not for Blessing Bill to submit and you change it to Blessing you know, you change your name to Lib or something, you know, Blessing, you now remove the B, the I, you know, it's now ESS. No, it's not for you to do. You share your personal data, but the company and the businesses in carrying out those security measures will now anonymize or change it, you know, not necessarily fake, like false name or fake in that sense, so that they hide it from others. Yeah. So no, you're not to send incorrect information. No, it's just a measure used by the data user.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we are taking our second question now. Thank you very much for the answer. Anyone that has a live question, kindly unmute yourself or raise your hand so that I'll call on you so that you can ask your question to our mentor. I'm taking the next question. In the context of data breach management, what are the essential components of an effective response plan? That question is for you.
Okay. So essential components of an effective response plan. That's when the data breach has already occurred, right? What are the essentials? So there's the aspect of the law, what the law provides, and there's also the aspect of what the business should be doing that is internal as well. So once a data breach has been identified, the next step, right, is the reporting internally so that the right people know about it. For instance, if the firewall is down in technology, if IT knows, IT is able to get it back up, or is meant to inform the IT service provider to get involved. So a response plan, first of all, once anyone has detected a data breach, inform the appropriate person. Some organizations have data protection officers. So if they're informed, you know, they are able to also inform IT. Then the other part as well is informing the regulator. Yeah, that's data protection, Nigeria Data Protection Commission. And you have 3 days to do that with all the information required under the law. So essential components would now include those things under the law, such as, you know, the nature of the breach, which of your data subjects are affected, how can this affect their rights, and what steps have you taken as an organization? Those are some of the questions, yes, that will be contained in the reports sent to the regulator, right? So for some people, Yahoo, I think Yahoo, when the data they had was hacked, they had to change people's passwords and they had to encrypt it. So they had to send a message around and tell everybody that we have to do this immediately. People should respond, or they're automatically changing people's passwords and doing things like that. So that information, you're now able to submit to the regulator that this is the step we took. Immediately we identified a data breach to manage the breach. So effective response plan, having a clear line of communication within the organization when it's discovered, informing the regulator, and then reducing or mitigating the breach, whether by informing the data subject so that they change their passwords so that the hackers no longer have access, so that it stops working for them, or you let them know and that you're able to delete the accounts, you know, to save any other information that is there. That's it, Mahadi.
Thank you very much. I'm taking in the last question. We are still expecting questions from mentees. What are the best practices for data breach management that organizations should adopt to minimize the risk of data breach occurring in the first place? I believe you touched some of these before.
Yes, I touched on that in the presentation as well, but I'll go over that. So you have to always test your business process, test your technology. How are you collecting that information? Can anybody also just, you know, do some things in the back end and be able to have access to that information? You know, check for any leaks, check that your firewall is strong, check that, you know, people are not able to send maybe phishing emails and things like that where people indirectly share data with someone because they think he's another person in the organization. You know, you have to test again things like that so that it will not happen in the first place. Or if someone requests, you know, you are able to identify them immediately So your data security measures must be in place. Your risk management process must be in place. Knowledge is very, very important, and one should not miss that. So once people have knowledge of what data breach can look like, you've already minimized it. So people are not likely to fall. If you need someone's access code to be able to commit the data breach, the person is not going to respond to any email they get because they have been trained and they are aware. So that knowledge to everybody, even as we've had this mentoring session and all of us have this knowledge, also sharing it with, those around us and all that, even our classmates and things like that. And for other people, as the knowledge expands, more people know and more people are also careful as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Muted. Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you very much, Ma, for the answers to the question. I hope we can still get questions from our mentees. I don't know if presenter for Group 1 can still make her presentation before we end the call. We would have loved to get Group 1's presentation too. Or any group member from Group 1 can present. Can anyone present? Okay. We've come to the end of the program for today. Ms. Kodichi. Okay, Isaac, I can see Isaac's hand is up. Isaac, you can ask a question.
I would like to ask a question actually. I hope. Okay, my question is, this best response plan, can it also be used like when a person is acting in his personal capacity, like not the company, like an individual, data has been breached. So can he use the same pattern response plan to like notify the company? That's like my question.
Okay, Isaac, let me understand. So you've identified that your data was like accessed, but not from you now, from a company. Like, okay, the information you shared with the company, you are seeing that it's somewhere else. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay, yes. So as an individual, you even have other, like I mentioned, that there are rights as an individual. So in that situation, you can inform the company, yes, and you should also inform the regulator that this has happened. So you are indirectly helping that company, because that means other people's data too may have been exposed as well. And if the company has been negligent, the company didn't do the right things and what they were supposed to do, you've brought that to light, and the regulator will now be able to investigate. So yes, it's good in that situation. Send an email to the company. You don't know who is in the company, you don't know who's involved or who you gave it to, but also going to the regulator that this has happened so that they are able to control, investigate, and ensure that the company does the proper thing. Because you might send to some companies and they will not take any action.
Okay, thank you, Ma. Ma, also, will you say it's advisable to like for the person to bring up a course of action, like straight up, not tell the company, just bring up a course of action because of the breach?
Well, yes, you're still within your rights, right? You're still within your rights to institute an action, trying to see where the course of action would come under. So fundamental human rights or privacy rights, but then the regulator can be involved. And I think that the new law also allows for compensation. So if even you are bringing up a course of action, you look at the Data Protection Act and the best way to go about it under the act, so that they are involved in the process so that it's treated speedily or swiftly, but the law actually allows you and authorizes you to be able to take action once there has been like an infringement on your rights or breach of your rights, yes. So if you don't want to inform the company and you just want to go ahead, I think it's still okay. It's still okay. Yeah, permitted under the law.
Okay, thank you, Ma.
Yeah.
That's what I would advise my
Yeah.
Okay, do we still have questions? Isaac, your hand is still raised, so I don't know if you still have another question.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me drop it. Okay.
All right, thank you. So thank you very much once again, Ms. Kodichi, for making it to the call and staying with us to the end of the call. Mr. Solomon bailed out on us today, so hopefully we have him on our next session. He has been with us since the beginning of the program. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ms. Kodichi. We hope to have you on other sessions. Thank you very much, everyone that stayed to the end of the call, the presenter and the group leaders and the group members for the research. See you guys same time next week. I hope you have a lovely weekend, everybody. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Mahadi. Bye, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.